So we're getting a little bit of an early start today. Today we're making birria ramen or birria noodles. I've been thinking about this for a while, so what we're gonna do, I'm gonna take the beef, I'm gonna place it onto the smoker to get that nice smoky flavor, then we're gonna make the adobo, let that simmer on the stove for a couple hours, and then what I'm gonna use is rice stick noodles because I like the texture of them. So we're gonna kind of experiment today. I know it's probably gonna be delicious. I've been thinking about this for a while, so without further ado, let's get to cooking. So let's talk about the meat. Right here what I have is some top round. Now, I want a leaner cut of meat because we're making noodles. I don't want it to be super fatty and greasy. If you were doing a traditional birria taco, you want a little bit of fat so you can get the tortilla nice and crispy. For me, something like top round or sirloin is probably fine, something that's a little bit leaner. What I'm gonna do here, we're just gonna slice this down into smaller sections to go on the smoker. Since it's not spending a lot of time on the smoker, I want to have at least enough time to develop some smoke flavor. Normally when you go ahead and smoke this, I would do it whole. It would go for maybe around 6 hours or so. Since we're probably only gonna do about an hour or two, we wanna cut this down a little bit so we can get that smoke flavor to penetrate into the meat. We're gonna season this very simply, just a little bit of salt, a little bit of black pepper, and some garlic powder to give a little bit of a savory flavor. Just go ahead and roll the meat all around, get it all nice and covered with the seasoning. And then what we're gonna do now, we're gonna go ahead and fire up the smoker. I'm gonna put these on there. We're gonna cook them for about 1 to 2 hours. So what I have here is some guajillo and ancho chilies. Now this is a staple in any birria recipe. You normally can get these at the grocery store. I've been having a very hard time finding these chilies. Luckily my brother had some, he brought them over, but if you have trouble finding them, or if you're in a part of a country that doesn't really sell these regularly, you can probably get them on Amazon. You know, these chilies might be a little bit too dry. I don't know how long they've been sitting for. So what I'm actually gonna do, I'm gonna rehydrate them first, and then I'm gonna remove the seeds, or at least try to remove as many seeds as I can. But as you can see, I'm breaking these apart, and they're just kind of falling apart. So I'm gonna rehydrate them now, see if I can actually remove some of the seeds a little easier. We're gonna add these chilies to a bowl, either a Pyrex, glass bowl, stainless steel works good. And then what I have here is some warm water. It's gonna allow me to soften them up so when we go to blend it later to make the adobo, they actually, puree into the rest of the ingredients. We're gonna let these hydrate for about, 20 minutes or so, just to soften up the skins. And then what I'll try to do is remove some of the seeds, and then we'll add them to the blender with the rest of the ingredients and make the adobo. All right, so the chilies have been hydrating for about 20 minutes, and I prepped the rest of my ingredients that we're gonna use for the adobo. So what we're gonna do here is we're just gonna scrape out the seeds. I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm just trying to get as many of the seeds that I can. And if you do, we can always strain it. So I might do that later depending on how the birria looks, but I might strain the broth before we actually make the noodles, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So you're just gonna scrape this out, set these aside. Also another thing, do not throw out your chili water, okay? You wanna use this when you go to blend the adobo, because you're gonna need a little bit of liquid to get it to puree, so don't throw this out. There's a lot of flavor in it. Now to make the adobo, right here I have a blender. You can use a food processor if you want. We're gonna add our chilies right to the blender, and a little bit of our pepper water just to get it to puree, maybe about a cup or so. Then we're gonna add 1 Spanish onion that we quartered, and about 7 garlic cloves. I like a lot of garlic, don't worry, it'll be fine. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna puree this a little bit now so I can get the rest of the ingredients in there. You might have to do this in stages depending on how big your blender is. So we're gonna give this a pulse a couple times here. All right, that should be good. Now we're gonna add 3 tomatoes. Oops, I lost one. You can use Roma tomatoes preferably, but these are just what I had. They're little like on the vine tomatoes. We're gonna season with 1 tablespoon of paprika, tablespoon of oregano, tablespoon of coriander powder, tablespoon of cumin, and then just a few cloves. This is 4 cloves. Now I know it's gonna need a little salt, so I'm gonna add a little bit of salt now. And black pepper. Now in order to give this adobo a little tang, we're gonna add 5 tablespoons of some white vinegar. So we're just gonna puree this until smooth. Now right now it looks a little bit too thick. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add just a little bit more of the chili water. I want it to be not super thin, but not super thick either. So we're gonna add just a little bit more. And then we're gonna continue to puree. All right, so that looks good. I'm just gonna check this for salt. It's actually pretty good. It does need a little bit more salt. All right, let's give it a taste again here. Pretty good. We're gonna leave it right there, and then once our meat is done smoking, I'm gonna show you guys how to make the birria. So our beef has been smoking for 2 hours. It's got a beautiful mahogany color. Now in a large pot on medium-high heat, we're gonna add a nice layer of some neutral oil. This is just vegetable oil. You wanna make sure you have a nice even layer on the bottom of the pot. Now once the oil is hot, we're gonna pour in our adobo. Make sure you pour it fast. I learned that the hard way. The safety lid goes on. You almost wanna like refry the adobo, if you will. Make sure you scrape the blender, as my wife says. You don't wanna miss out on all this flavor. So we're gonna let this go for a few minutes, and then we're gonna add about 4 cups of beef stock, 1 bunch of fresh thyme, a few bay leaves, and a little piece of cinnamon. We're gonna bring this to a gentle simmer, and then we're gonna add our beef right to the pot. Go ahead and nestle them down in there. I wish you guys could smell this. It smells amazing. You know how that barbecue smell? It smells nice and smoky. It's like, imagine birria, but with that nice, like a nice barbecue type smell. That's what it smells like in here right now. All right, so we're gonna cover this with a lid, and we're gonna let this simmer for about maybe 2 or 3 hours. I'll check it, and once it's super, super tender, we're gonna shred it up, and then I'm gonna make the noodles, and we're gonna put it all together. So the birria has been simmering for about 4 hours. The meat's nice and tender. You're gonna wanna test it by poking a knife through it. See that? And if it goes in like butter, it's done. We're gonna go ahead and remove the beef. We're gonna set this aside, and I'm gonna shred it up. But first what we're gonna have to do, we have to taste this birria broth, and we have to make sure that it's seasoned properly. So I'm gonna give it a taste real quick here. So it does need a little bit more salt. Look at another piece of meat. Look at a bonus piece. Let's taste it again. Ooh, that's perfect. We're gonna take a little bit of our beef, and as you can see, it has a beautiful smoke ring. Just that 2 hours on there got it nice and smoky. We're gonna go ahead and cut this up real nice and fine like you would for a birria taco. Set that to the side. So let's talk about the noodles. What I have here is rice stick noodles. Now these are common in like pad thai and stuff like that. I like the texture of them a lot, but if you don't like these, you can always just use regular ramen noodles. So all we have to do is bring some water to a boil, and we're gonna drop in 2 portions or so of the noodles, and then you wanna immediately turn off the heat. And all we're gonna do is we're gonna let these sit in the water for about 5 minutes. They're gonna be cooked perfectly al dente. Also, you do wanna keep in mind, since the noodles are going in the birria is gonna be hot. So the noodles are gonna cook the rest of the way in the birria. So don't overcook your noodles, they'll fall apart. If you're really worried about it, you can use the traditional ramen noodles, but I really like the texture of these noodles, and they're gluten-free. So we're gonna let these hang out for about 5 minutes, and then we're gonna put it all together. So you wanna get yourself a nice big ramen bowl. You're gonna add some of your birria broth right to the bottom of the bowl. Then we're gonna add a nice amount of our rice noodles and as much of the chopped beef as you want right on top, just like that. If I was serving this to somebody, I'd probably give them around, I don't know, 4 ounces or so. We're gonna finish this with some diced onion, freshly chopped cilantro, and a little bit of fresh lime juice. It's gonna brighten it up. You can add a little lime as garnish there on the side. And there you have it. There's our beautiful birria noodles, birria ramen, whatever you wanna call them, nice and smoky. I really can't wait to give this a try. Let's give it a taste. Pretty good. Man, that lime juice sets it off. This sat here for a little bit, so a lot of that birria broth soaked into the rice noodles. It's very, very good. It's got slight smoky flavor. It's not overpowering on the smoke. I do like the fact that I only smoked it a little bit, got a nice smoke ring. Then we cooked it the rest of the way in the birria broth. The fresh cilantro, lime juice, and onion gives it a nice freshness to the dish. It's got robust flavor from those chilies. It's not super spicy though, so if you want to add a little more heat, you can add some chili de arbol, maybe 4 or 5 of those chilies, and it'll give a nice amount of kick to it. Or what you can do is you can add some chipotle and adobo sauce, and it'll give it a nice little bit of heat. I'm really glad I chose to use the top round for the meat. If you use chuck roast, while the meat will be a little more tender, the top round makes it so it's not so greasy, right? We're not dipping tortillas in this and frying them. Anyways, if you guys end up trying it, please leave me a comment. Let me know how you liked it. And if you enjoyed this video or you learned something, give me a like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.
Thank you.